Manju Sarda was found dead inside her husband's apartment. The official cause of death was poisoning, specifically a lethal dose of potassium cyanide. The legal retribution was swift. Inside the Pune Additional Sessions Court, the judge convicted her husband, Sharad, his uncle, and his brother of a coordinated murder conspiracy. Sharad was sentenced to death. Following this, the High Court of Maharashtra upheld the conviction but commuted Sharad's death sentence to life in prison. The state was moving to execute a man based on an investigation that contained a significant blind spot. Not a single eyewitness had seen the crime occur. When a trial lacks an eyewitness, the prosecution relies on circumstantial evidence. Instead of direct observation, the court must connect secondary facts to infer that a crime took place. Sharad took his final appeal to the highest legal tier in the country, the Supreme Court of India. The justices recognized that without direct witnesses, a case built on circumstantial evidence is vulnerable. A plausible narrative can be constructed that inadvertently frames an innocent person. To take a citizen's life or liberty without eyewitnesses, the justice system cannot settle for a believable story. The evidence must be so complete that it leaves no room for any other conclusion. To evaluate the evidence, the Supreme Court introduced a specific operational framework, the Panchsheel test. This is a rigid 5-step logical filter. For circumstantial evidence to prove guilt, it must pass through every one of these links to show that, within all human probability, the act was done by the accused. This standard is absolute. If the prosecution fails to satisfy even one of the 5 steps, the entire chain of evidence is considered broken, and the conviction must be set aside. The first 2 steps of the test are foundational. The circumstances must be fully established, and those facts must be consistent with the hypothesis of the accused's guilt. The state's strongest physical evidence was the official autopsy report. The toxicology screening proved that Manju Sarda died from fatal cyanide poisoning. However, the Supreme Court noted that while the autopsy confirms how the victim died, it provides no evidence regarding who administered the poison. Establishing that a crime occurred does not fulfill the legal requirement to link that act to the specific conduct of the accused. Steps 3 and 4 are the most difficult. The circumstances must be conclusive in nature, and they must exclude every possible hypothesis except for the guilt of the accused. The prosecution argued motive using 3 letters written by Manju Sarda, which depicted a marriage suffering from severe domestic strife. Under Step 4, the court had to ask, does evidence of an unhappy marriage exclusively prove murder? The justices reasoned that the same evidence of domestic depression makes the alternative hypothesis of suicide just as logically and medically valid as murder. Because the state's evidence allowed for a tragic non-criminal explanation, it failed the requirement to exclude all other possibilities. Step 5 requires a chain of evidence so complete that it leaves no reasonable ground for any conclusion consistent with the innocence of the accused. The prosecution's final link was Sharad's location. He was present in the apartment around the time of his wife's death. Proving a man was in his own home cannot sufficiently link him to a murder conspiracy. This left the prosecution with isolated facts rather than a complete chain of proof. The trial court looked at the circumstantial timeline and assumed guilt, but the Supreme Court evaluated the same timeline and found it failed to disprove innocence. The justices emphasized a core principle of criminal jurisprudence. Whenever the evidence presents 2 valid possibilities, one pointing to guilt and the other to innocence, the benefit of the doubt must be given to the accused. Because the evidence failed the Panchsheel test, the Supreme Court overturned the convictions, acquitting Sharad and his family of all charges. The legacy of this case ensures the state cannot convict based on a plausible story. The prosecution's evidence must be so conclusive that it leaves no room for any other truth to exist.